I'm used to having a company where the ideas that I have are something that I can easily pursue. So I think it'd be a tough transition.
It's a great machine. It's a step forward in terms of the way it uses graphics and the speed. And this is a machine that a lot of people are going to be able to afford. That's a very, very useful machine. Well, Microsoft was the original microcomputer software company, and so we were the largest in the industry up until 2 or 3 years ago when Lotus took that position. Actually, being number one isn't that big a deal. I mean, it's great that our sales have grown, and we're about to enter into some fun competition with Lotus in the spreadsheet area. So a lot of people around here enjoyed it, but it's not a major goal for us. 1987 is an exciting year for graphics interface. The increased popularity of the interface has meant that the sales of the Macintosh have been accelerating, as well as all the great software that's sold on Macintosh. We end up hiring mostly people right out of college or business school.
And they don't need a lot of training. They are ready to be brilliant from the word go?
No, they need to be smart before they come in, and we give them a lot of training on the job. We put them right to work. It was 7 years ago, in 1983, when I last keynoted Comdex. At that time, I kicked off Microsoft's crusade for the graphical user interface. Well, I don't think it's accurate to say there's been a dramatic shift. Within our industry, we've been very successful, and we've set a lot of strong standards, had a lot of great products, and it's a very competitive industry. And so you're seeing a lot of reaction to that. But in terms of the publicity and the broad acceptance of the direction we're taking, I think it's more positive now than it's ever been. I only let them schedule meetings on Saturday generally. Steve and I are totally hardcore that this is going into Windows as fast as possible. I think this is probably the biggest gathering of PC developers that there's ever been. In fact, we've overflowed the capacity of the Moscone Center. We have a second room upstairs where John Lazarus, Microsoft's VP of System Marketing,
angefangen hat.
I was
Nun, ich war gerade 13 Jahre alt und ging auf die Lakeside-Schule in Seattle. Ich glaube, die erste Schule, die überhaupt einen Computer hatte. Wir hatten aber nur über Telefon zeitlich begrenzten Zugriff auf einen Computer in der Stadt. Ein langsames Ding mit einem noch langsameren Drucker. Und die Lehrer hatten große Sorgen damit. Sie konnten nämlich nicht damit umgehen. Das war der Anfang meiner Karriere. Ich lernte als einer der Ersten mit dem Computer umzugehen und habe dann den anderen Kindern beigebracht, in der Programmiersprache BASIC zu programmieren.
Ended up teaching the other kids how to use it and programming in the basic computer language. This industry will be at the center of all of it. With its software innovation, its competitive hardware, will be shaping this so-called information highway. I think there's a lot of elements that go into it. A vision of what software could do.
What was the vision? What was your vision?
Well, a computer on every desk and in every home.
Right.
I'm somebody who devoted my life to creating a software company and working on how can software empower people. The big theme is the active controls, the ability to do live web pages with the audio, video, rich behavior with any different kind of programming tool. But we showed our Java compiler, we showed our Java interpreter, we showed I think a dozen new things that we're doing. Now these conferences have really been major milestones in the history of the software business. Going all the way back to the original battle of character mode interface versus graphical interface, we used the Developers Conference to bring people in to the graphical world. And that ended up completely reordering the fortunes of software companies, creating many, many new opportunities. The internet isn't standing still. I mean, people say, well, okay, aren't you done adopting to the internet? Well, the internet isn't done changing, and we're part of one of the companies that's pushing that forward. Allowing people to collaborate, no matter where they're located, even bringing in partners that are outside the company. Companies will do far better than they have in the past. And we're already starting to see some wonderful examples of how this is taking place. and it's really extending itself throughout the organization. In fact, if we just look in the last few years, the shift towards the PC part of this industry has been very, very dramatic. The key proponents of the PC approach, people like Compaq and Dell, have been growing fantastically. It was 23 years ago when we started the company, but there's no doubt that taking the habits we formed and sticking with those, which would be hard to change, the next 23 years are going to give us a lot more potential and maybe even get us pretty close to that original vision, which was a computer on every desk and in every home.
Well, with the digital advances, the cost of doing this the right way and empowering those people has now gotten to be very, very small. In fact, most companies are already investing in the infrastructure that's required. They're buying PCs, they're connecting them in a network, and they've got connections out to the internet.
This industry really keeps on being amazing. We've gone to new heights this year, new breakthroughs, new companies, new products. And it's great to know that all over America, there are entrepreneurs working in their garages. Also, there are lawyers working in their 20th floor offices. Both groups working to do what they do best. Well, so .NET speaks to the idea of having a platform that partly runs on the internet and also runs on a variety of devices. The PC is the primary device. It's the most important device in terms of its richness, the creativity software that you have there. But your information, your security, all the things that you want to have access to are available on any of these devices. But in the decade ahead, I can predict very clearly that we'll provide over twice the productivity improvement as we did during the 90s.
This is a milestone for PC users. People spend a lot of time in front of their PCs. We have over 400 million users who sit down and use Windows every single day.
Now, why is it that some people are questioning how fast technology will move forward and the benefits of it? Well, certainly we have a different economic environment. You know, it's not the time period where everybody has to do a website without even asking why, where every company has to just drive forward and use the latest technology. Technology decisions are based on the expectation now that they're justified by business value. Well, I'm very excited about the breakthroughs that'll take place in computer science over the next 5 years and the next 10 years. And it's a paradox to me that people are expecting less now than they did, say, in 1999, where there was the bubble, the hype, and all that. Microsoft has been very privileged to be associated with MIT and helping collaborate on a number of projects here. Microsoft is also has some great employees who came from MIT, most notably people like Gordon Bell, who's doing some still very creative after making so many contributions, and also Butler Lampson, who's actually back here teaching courses as well as continuing to help Microsoft. I wanted to mention that I was recently involved in a very interesting breach of security. I was off at a conference called the World Economic Forum in Davos. And what happened was I wrote some notes, very important notes, during a session sitting next to the Prime Minister of the UK, Tony Blair. And I accidentally left these notes behind, which was very irresponsible.
Microsoft was started a number of years before Apple Computer because we were actually the first doing software. Zuckerberg's interesting because he was actually at Harvard when I went and gave a speech encouraging people to think about technology and where I was going. He was actually an attendee, and now he's doing neat things. But entrepreneurs cut their own path.
Our top management team, the majority of them joined us as right after whatever degree they got, if any. Now, our business in many ways is kind of simple. It's about writing great software. We sit down every year to go through the various things that people have to be careful about. We have products that have high market share. We do business all over the world. So there's some particular dictates, how you work with suppliers, gifts they might come forward with. But it's mainly the seeing these people in action that make us confident about their behavior.
Welcome to the first Global Human Resources Forum. In an age where knowledge is the foundation of growth and investment in human capital is a key driver of economic success, it is critical that we improve our understanding of how the private and public sectors can work in partnership to support human resources development around the world.
For my part, I'm just happy that the Crimson called me Harvard's most successful dropout. I guess that makes me valedictorian of my own special class. I did the best of everyone who failed. I'm very excited to be here for the first business launch of our key new products. Over the next few weeks, these products will be launched around the world to our business customers. They've been many years in the making, and based on the feedback you've provided and actually billions of development money going into these, we're thrilled about the new opportunities that they'll open up. It's $31,000
that Apple paid you for
the floating point basic, and I flew out to Apple. I spent 2 days there getting the cassette. The cassette tapes were the main ways that people stored things at the time.
Right.
I think people are even underestimating the impact of software and some of the ways that it can improve a wide range of things. Now, for me personally, this year will be a year of change. This summer, I switched from being full-time at Microsoft to being part-time there, and from being part-time at the foundation to being full-time there. Some of us are lucky enough to arrive at moments in life when we can pause, reflect on our work, and say, this is great. It's fun, exciting, and useful. I could do this forever. But the passing of time forces each of us to take stock and ask, what have I accomplished so far? What do I still want to accomplish? 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, my focus was totally on how the magic of software could change the world. Terrible disease. It was in the United States. It was in Europe. People didn't know what caused it until the early 1900s when a British military man figured out that it was mosquitoes. So it was everywhere, and two tools helped bring the death rate down. One was killing the mosquitoes with DDT, and the other was treating the patients with quinine or quinine derivatives. I'm excited about cutting-edge research. I'm excited about countries like this one that have decided to invest in the future. And I'm excited about a group of people that comes together to take a hard look at the truth behind how we're taking information technology and what the reality is of bringing its benefits not just to the richest, but to everyone in the world. My full-time work at the foundation is mostly about vaccines and seeds, about the things that we need to invent and deliver to help the poorest 2 billion live better lives. But energy and climate are extremely important to these people. In fact, more important than to anyone else on the planet. When I dropped out of college, I promised my dad I'd go back, and so I'm doing it kind of a day at a time to work off that debt that I've got. This is the first college set of visits I've done since switching to work full-time for the Gates Foundation. Well, polio is close to being eradicated, and if we can keep the funding up and keep doing a good job on it, it'll become the second disease ever eliminated, and no kid will ever be paralyzed again. Most education funding, whether it's K through 12 or the great universities or community colleges, most of the money for those things is coming out of these state budgets. I first began coming here when I worked full-time at Microsoft. At that time, I was talking about software and the vision of software, and I got to see how people were taking advantage of that. But in the last 4 years, since I've been devoting most of my time to philanthropy, I've been able to visit more often, forming deeper friendships and a stronger understanding of the region. We have an incredible set of people here. I challenge all of us to use the time together to share our knowledge and insights, challenge each other's ideas and assumptions, and use our combined understanding and energy to generate the new ideas and partnerships that'll achieve our goal. We have 3 types of energy factories: nuclear, natural gas, and coal. And then we have various forms of energy farming, which are about 1,000 times more diffuse per area, and that's wind, biofuels, and solar thermal, solar chemical, solar electric. So that's energy farming. And so somewhere either in the energy factory or energy farming, you've got to solve cost, environmental, and security. And we have today 45 countries that are still in that low-income category. And what I'm saying is that by 2035, there should be less than 10. And they'll mostly be either places like North Korea, where you have a political system that basically creates poverty, or they're landlocked African countries where the geography, the disease burden, the disparate ethnicities mean that they haven't been able to bring together a government that in terms of education, infrastructure, health, does even the most minimum things for them. If anything kills over 10 million people in the next few decades, it's most likely to be a highly infectious virus rather than a war. Not missiles, but microbes. Now, part of the reason for this is that we have invested a huge amount in nuclear deterrence. But we've actually invested very little in a system to stop an epidemic. Well, I met with 3 different groups doing biology, and of course for the Gates Foundation work, understanding the latest tools of biology and the insights so that we can take all the infectious diseases and eventually get rid of those. It's very exciting to me. Of all the things that are out there, what could cause an excess in a single year of 10 million deaths? Now, clearly a big war could, and a pandemic, natural or created by bioterror. I want to also offer my congratulations to this year's winner of the World Food Prize, Simon Groot. His work to bring high-quality vegetable seeds to smallholder farmers deserves recognition. And I want to thank all of you for your incredible work to help the world's farmers. Well, Microsoft was very lucky in that we're not a capital-intensive business. So it was financed by money I'd made in high school. And I did the school scheduling, and there was all sorts of software things you could do and make money fairly easily in those days, because the number of people who knew how to do software things was very small. If people are disappointed in their government, they feel like it's not respecting their values, or it's not prioritizing them, or let somebody else get in a better deal than they get, that just general negativity can lead to the government not being able to invest in these long-term issues. And if voters feel like, okay, the elites kind of like doing this stuff, and the elites are not caring about us, that really hurts. Well, it's pretty important that we focus more on nutrition, because about 40% of the kids who do survive end up not with physical or mental development. So the idea that we can take AI and understand, for example, why prematurity rates are so high, and understand the nutritional deficits that take place. Of the kids in these very poor countries, up to 20% of them die before the age of 5, and 40% of the remainder will never develop physically or mentally to their full capacity. So they are deeply malnourished during their early years, and so their ability to learn and contribute is permanently damaged. Yes, the
Human-to-human respiratory spread is the scariest scenario. It's a nightmare. I wish it had come, 5 or 10 years later. Then governments might have done the preparation to move quickly, like a few governments did, and the technologies would have been further along. Well, certainly the pandemic is a huge setback on almost every SDG goal. If you look at the health systems in developing countries, they've been, doing not just in COVID, but in all disease areas, a worse job. And so mortality rates for many, many diseases have gone up quite a bit. Then we have the financial deficits, the educational deficits. And so it's a setback. But once we get the vaccines out on a broad basis, then, I'm optimistic that we will resume the growth that we had before, including things like great improvements in health systems. I was super lucky that a grandmother in particular read a lot of books to me and my sisters, and that developed a love of books. She picked, Dr. Dolittle, lots of fun stuff. And then when I was able to read, I was very avid. Over the summers, there was always a public library would have a contest about who could read a lot of books. And an addiction to reading has been a key secret of my success. The amount of change, new ideas, it's way greater than the pandemic, and it needs a level of cooperation that would be unprecedented. Around the world, there are very few high-volume vaccine manufacturing facilities. Expanding the geography of vaccine manufacturing, both for pandemics and routine immunization, is a challenging but important task.
Well, I don't want us to wait until we forget about how awful this has been. I mean, we've had tens of millions of deaths, trillions of dollars of economic loss, education loss, mental depression. And with a few key steps, we can make sure this won't happen again.
When one person's house is on fire, that creates a risk for everyone else's homes. And so what we've had these last few years is like a horrific global fire. Well, climate change is very unjust because most of the suffering will be the poor, particularly who have to farm to get enough food, and when their crop fails, they suffer disease and malnutrition. So, the speed with which this needs to be done is very daunting. You don't want to try to make your kids do the same things you did. That wouldn't be that great. And, they were also very lucky to get a good education. None of them were computer nerds. One of them's definitely nerdy, but more in a history, science, economics, and not kind of the math and computer science, which is probably good. They're all way more sociable than I am, which means you inherit some from your mother.
Well, there's certainly a lot of discussion about how should it be regulated, and the companies are saying yes. The government needs to understand our work and needs to look at the right regulations. At the same time, people saying, okay, the U.S. wants to stay ahead. So whenever we talk about, could we slow it down? They're like, well, don't slow it down yet.
Right.
Well, it's the first technology that has no limit. I mean, when you invent a tractor or even a cell phone, you kind of figure out, okay, we can figure out how that's going to change life. Here, where the AI is very intelligent, and when you put it in robotic form, it can do a lot of both blue-collar and white-collar jobs.